Greetings, magnificent souls, to the Lily Bewley podcast, where we have open and honest discussions about ourselves. This is your host, Lily Bewley, and I'm honored to have conversations here with thought leaders, visionaries, healers, and even solo conversations with myself about things I am currently reflecting on. This is a place where we break down, break away, and break through our emotional trauma, allowing ourselves to be healthy, be happy, and live a peaceful life. We are tired of being sick and tired. We are tired, but we are not giving up. We know that there is something magnificent inside of us. And because we are fighting daily, hourly, and by the minute, fighting ourselves, our kids, our spouses, we have to do things differently. We have to break this cycle. We don't have a million chances. We have to be happy now. We have to find a way. So how do we do that? How is that possible? If you look around at what society is telling you, they tell you that what we're doing is impossible. Yet it's happening every single day. And it's happening through the practice and the love that we call awakening the magnificent soul. We are all magnificent souls, and these are our stories of healing. Today, in episode 120, I welcome Lisa Tahir to the show to talk about the Chiron effect and emotional wounding. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts about this episode or anything you would like me to cover on future podcasts at epiphanyvault.com. Remember, it is a safe place, and I would welcome the discussion. And also a request, if you are enjoying the show, please rate and share and review so we can get the word out to more and more souls who want to heal. My guest today, Lisa Tahir, is from New Orleans, Louisiana, where she became a licensed clinical social worker in 2000. She expanded her practice to Los Angeles in 2014 and is the founder of Psychoastrology and the author of The Chiron Effect, which we talk about today, healing your core wounds through astrology, empathy, and self-forgiveness. And this has been endorsed by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, who says, as a student of Buddhist science, I have great confidence in the role empathy and forgiveness play in human development. The Chiron effect will be of interest to many and will greatly benefit readers. Please enjoy this conversation with Lisa Tahir. Lisa Tahir, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on and talk about this book that I read this weekend, The Chiron Effect. I'm so curious and I can't wait to share this information with the audience.
Lily, thank you so much for having me on your show. And I appreciate that you read my book. Thank you. It's something to get through. And I appreciate you actually took that time.
Ooh, it's fun. I love all of these, these kind of books that help me identify some strengths or patterns or maybe just some nuanced things about myself that I really didn't know before. So I love your take on it. And we'll talk about that today too.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So Chiron, what the heck is Chiron and why is this important?
I wondered the same thing just a few years ago, Lily, like, what the hell is this about? I actually sat to meditate and I asked the universe, universe, I've been a therapist over 20 years, as well as being a client in therapy for that long. And, why is it that I still get triggered and feel so upset sometime? And even clients that I've worked with for a long time or that have been in their own growth process and really self-aware and conscious, what is going on? Like, is there something I'm missing? And I heard in meditation the word Chiron, and it when I Googled it, I really wasn't impressed, to be honest. There's a reference to Carl Jung that I remembered in grad school, where Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious, the wounded healer archetype. Chiron. And in Greek mythology, Chiron was the centaur and founding father of medicine, the healing arts. We see Chiron referenced every time you go to a doctor's office and you see the staff of medicine, the snake with the two snakes intertwined. Chiron actually gave that to Asclepius, who he tutored. And I thought, well, okay, that's cool, universe. And I really kind of dismissed it, but it kept. Have you ever had the experience, Lily, where something's just like poking at you? It keeps coming up.
Yeah, currently, and I'm in that right now. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to hear more about that. That sounds interesting. So this Chiron thing kept coming up. And so I was led to learn about Chiron as an astrological placement in your birth chart, just like your sun sign, your moon, your rising. And what I found to be interesting is this placement of Chiron in one of the signs, Taurus, Gemini, Scorpio, etc., speaks to, on a spectrum, a core wounding or vulnerability that we each experience in pattern formations in our lives. And this is an area of our life, an aspect that we tend to feel embarrassed about, like hide from others. You might have low self-esteem, but no one would ever know that because you seem so outgoing, but secretly inside of yourself, you just never feel like you're good enough. Or for some people, it might be this reoccurring wound of neglect with Chiron and Taurus, or abandonment, even Chiron and Cancer. And so that's when it started to get interesting. And I spent 3.5 years researching and writing to connect Chiron with psychological healing and spiritual practices, which is what my book is really about.
Wow. So connecting Chiron with psychological healing and spiritual practices and astrology. So where's this? And take as long as you want, girl. But what's the through line, and what's the connecting? Is it about the wounding and about the kind of core wounds, or like how did you? It's mind blowing that something like this would download for you and with you, and then you went to research it, and then it's just, here it is in form. I don't know if there's a question in there, but I'd love to hear.
Thank you. It really was a download process of the 3.5 years, because I've wanted to write a book, like probably many people listening. And I have all kinds of notebooks with all these scattered ideas, and just nothing ever stuck. But somehow with this, I felt like I was given this information with astrology as the diagnostic point. Find your Chiron. And from that placement, how I was able to connect, I felt led, in fact, to connect how this relates to our wounding emotionally, sometimes sexually, financially, just the different aspects of our lives that we have in motion. And we might be really awesome at a few of those areas, but usually there might be one that it's like, okay, we don't feel so masterful in, or we feel like we don't even want to touch it because it's just been too painful, for example. And I even have the metaphor in the book, putting your hand on a hot stove. It just takes once. I remember as a little girl at like 5 or 6 doing that once, never did it again. And our emotions are the same way. There's some experiences that are just so painful, you kind of never want to go there, but that also disconnects you from the potential and the possibility of having a beautiful experience. So I encourage in my book from the beginning to look at this as we are each a container for change. And like, that's the journey we're going on, to maybe take 20 minutes a day. It's, you write it in a weekend. Wow. To take some little chunks of time to just be with yourself, reflecting upon your childhood, times when you felt really loved, and times when you didn't. And I share a little bit about those experiences in my life as well, to be relatable. Like, I grew up in a lot of abuse and trauma. It wasn't easy. So I don't come to you as like having lived this smooth and easy childhood. It was really rough. And I had to learn and heal, and started therapy when I was just 21 after being kicked out at 19. And, so there's been a lot I've had to unpack. And I'd like for the process to be easier for people, Lily, rather than harder. And that's why I wrote the book and took those years to really synthesize things, so that you can really use this as a guide when things change in your life.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah. So when I went on your website, which I'll put in the show notes, I put in my information and it came up with this chart. And we talked about this before. So we're going to talk about this as surface level as we can.
Yeah.
Um, where people talk about like, I don't know, I will say this, I know nothing about astrology, like I'm not super connected to it.
Yeah.
But it came up with a chart and it said that my Chiron was in Taurus. And
Hmm.
so, everyone, if you're interested in like knowing what that is, like I said, I'll put that information in the show notes. But so would I have that information if someone goes in there and does that? What do they do with that? Like, I think mine was about neglect, I believe. And so is
Absolutely.
it that reflection process that you're kind of promoting? Is that kind of what happens with that?
Well, look, there's also a chart in the book that I just opened to, and I can double check because when you do go to the interactive website, it is like a full astrological chart that you get, and
Hmm.
you're looking for the K symbol that has a circle
Hmm.
on the bottom. So it,
Hmm.
it is a little confusing, I know. So that's why I have this chart as well. Will you just tell me your month of birth and year, and I'll kind of verify?
Yeah, 10/17/80.
10, so October of 1980. And let
Mhm.
me see. October of 1980. I should be able to find that.
And nobody try to use that on any of my passwords because it's not it. I'm just kidding.
June. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. You're Chiron and Taurus, and as I was speaking about, you said it does speak to a core wounding or vulnerability. For some people, this is wounding. For others, it's more of an ouch. Rather than a deep, healing process, and it relates to having experienced neglect of your emotional or physical
Mhm.
needs at some
Mhm.
level
Mhm.
growing up. There may have been sexual abuse with this placement of Chiron.
Mhm.
And, the goal for healing is based on trusting yourself because,
Mm.
you were told not to in some way, shape, or form
Mhm.
growing up, that like what you knew was true and real somehow wasn't. And
Mhm.
that's a part of that neglect. You need something, but the adults around you are minimizing it or ignoring
Mhm.
it and kind of
Mhm.
like, oh, like go away. But you have really good intuition with this
Mhm.
placement of Chiron. And it's about your self-worth and healing your
Mhm.
self-worth and that you're worthy, you're deserving of all the good things. You're not too much. And you might have learned to kind of accept less than what you really want because people might not have been able. A caretaker might have neglected you because of an
Mhm.
addiction, even,
Mhm. Mhm.
versus like not being there physically. They might have been there, but just like lights out, nobody home,
Mhm.
for example. And
Yeah.
so, and like your body image, your sexuality, financial, you might have turned to, money for security and doing really well in that way, but maybe learning how to trust someone else to also take care of you in some ways versus being
Mm.
so independent. Does any of that resonate?
All of it.
Okay, wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, super.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that is, in different areas of my life, especially now that I've done a lot of healing and a lot of
Yeah.
growing, it's like it's continuously hitting that edge of, and for me, I frame it as my authenticity. What do I want? Who am I?
Yes.
All of that stuff, because there hasn't been a nurturing, to developmentally, and with all the other traumas and stuff, to actually find out what
Yeah.
that is. And so yeah, like I said, I'm sitting in that right now.
And now it's your time. And even you
Yeah.
doing your podcast, I found, Lily, people like you that are doing things related to healing and getting this information and knowledge out. You've already been healing your Chiron through even this platform, and you
Mm.
can consciously connect that now and really affirm yourself. And like, you've been on your path and
Mm.
you got there intuitively, so you can really trust yourself again, just more
Mm.
and more, and
Hmm.
what you feel led to do and not do.
Yeah. Yeah, and not do. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's just as
Yeah.
important sometime.
Yeah, super
Sometimes it's about
powerful.
doing less, rather than doing more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's figuring out what it is. Again, like, how do I spend my time? How do I spend my energy? All of that. That's the process. that is the
It
process
is.
that I'm going through right now.
Does
Yeah.
this relate to it all? What you mentioned a few moments ago, like something kind of prodding you?
Yeah, it's like business related, more than
Okay.
anything else. It's like, I'll share if you like, if you'd
Yeah, I'm
like to
curious.
listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, just very similar to your story about how you were introduced to Chiron. I feel like a vision for me that I was given, I like not really something that um I made up, but like I think was given to me from some larger purpose is about love, and I focus on dating and love. And the earthly way on how to do that, like how to have massive impact, is that's the mess that I'm sitting in right now. A lot about business, a lot about I feel like I have been given gifts, like my intuition is very strong now. And I listen to it. And you know the coaching industry, I'm sure we can just go on and
Yes.
on and on. There's lots of stuff out there, and it's distracting for me because
Hmm.
it's hard to find my authenticity and also stay in my gift that was given to me.
Yes.
Something that I've transformed the way that I've been thinking about what my purpose is on this planet is about, um not so much about how much I make, but how many people that I impact. And that's helped me a
Yeah.
lot. But I don't like the mess that I'm sitting in right now is that I don't know what it looks like. So there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
So that's what I was referring to.
You know, it helped me in my business to put in to that interactive website, like the date I incorporated Lisa Tahir LLC. Did you
Mm,
incorporate, or was there a day like you started your business like
mm-hmm,
that you could tie to a date?
mm-hmm.
You might want to try that, or you can email it
Interesting.
to me and I'll do it for you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the one thing I learned, Lily, is, and it was just so, the universe has a sense of humor. It came out
It
with
does.
the Chiron of my business has to do with Libra, Chiron and Libra. And
Mhm.
that speaks to both, it speaks to contracts, marriage and business.
Mm,
And it was so interesting because in the moment I pulled that up, I felt led to go look at that. I was in the middle of trying to get out of a contract I signed. I didn't read it well, in all
mhm,
honesty. And then I'm like, I don't want to pay for this. And I ended up having to pay something like $800 to get out of it. And
mm,
the whole message was, for me, it's really like reading contracts. And when I don't understand, ask questions or don't sign them yet. So it was a
mhm.
like $800 lesson to, so it can just be interesting to see if maybe that might help you make some decisions around
Yeah,
what to do.
totally. I appreciate that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah. You can email
Um,
me that date and I'll pull it up
so,
for you.
well, it's so interesting too, because that's like a great segue into, so there like entities can have chirons, like you're talking
Yeah.
about. Um,
Our businesses,
yeah.
relationships, like your first date, the date of your first date, or when you got married, if that applies, as well as cities, the date a city was founded. Because I know, and again, I'm a psychotherapist, not an astrologer. In the back of the book, I cite some of my favorite astrologers, and I've heard many of them speak of, cities have astrological charts. And I did do a brief addendum chapter about the psychoastrology of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
having to do with Chiron being in the sign of Aries in the fourth house, having to do with home and family and taking care of each other. And I thought that was interesting and almost like I got it wrong, because the United States is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And to have this wounding in the fourth house having to do with taking care of its own people, when I started to reflect more, it made so much sense, because though we are so profitable and powerful, the school systems here in New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans and in other rural and urban areas, some of them don't have books. The infrastructure, veterans that are killing themselves at an alarming rate
Mm-hmm.
and don't have adequate housing or health care. And, we go to the aid of so many other countries, which is wonderful. At the same time, I think, on the larger macro scale, we could do more to take care and have things available for our own residents.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it never occurred to me until I read your book again. Like I'm not in, I wouldn't say that I'm very into astrology or anything like that. So it's so interesting that like a business can have a core wounding, or a country or an agreement or a contract or a relationship. And
Absolutely.
is it the same idea? Like if you find that out, like for example, if I'm dating, for example, and I meet someone and what do I do? Do I go and put them in put that time and date in a chart and then look at it and see kind of like, okay, this may come up type of thing? Or like,
It
what
could
would you
really
like
help for
practically?
both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could really help for both of you to know your Chiron placement, because that's the area of vulnerability where,
Yeah.
arguments or fights or disagreements might originate from, because it's like in 1914, Freud and his colleagues called it the repetition compulsion, where we repeat these patterns,
Yeah.
trying to master them, but without consciousness of what we're trying to master, it kind of eludes us. And then object relationists spoke about that same patterning coming from our childhood imprints that we experienced. And so my book sources from that. This is about our patterns. And in relationships, we certainly have patterns and
Mhm.
tend to trigger each other in the unhealed ways that we experience love or didn't in our own upbringings. And we almost like magnetically attract the kind of person to help us work that out. So if you can know each other's Chiron, each other's vulnerability, instead of attacking that in the other person, you can maybe nurture and support that area of them and them for you. So it becomes like smoother and easier and less
Mm.
friction in a negative way.
That
Can
makes
definitely
sense.
be helpful when you're dating.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So what, and I think that you answered this, but I just want to kind of like make it explicit. How does emotional trauma and traumas and abuse that we've experienced, like, now we have it, like, it sounds like that there's a framework and a filter through you can filter some of our experiences through, which is what you've given us and what the universe/God has given us. But
Yeah.
um, what about those earthly things that do happen to us, like that, those emotional traumas, the abuses and neglects? How does that weave and filter if we haven't already talked about that?
No, not in such an explicit way. And I actually address this in the book it's explicitly because it's so important, having to do with the spectrum of core
Mhm.
wounds versus an area of vulnerability. And
Mhm.
when a person has experienced something like childhood sexual abuse, domestic violence, physical abuse, or neglect, it's like their world, the sense of the world being safe is shattered in some
Mhm.
way, shape, or form. And that really sets this pattern of a person believing and feeling like the world isn't safe for them. And just
Mhm.
that trajectory kind of is the path that you look at life through, like as if you're wearing these glasses. And it can be, it can like always feel like you need to protect yourself, and the brain being in hyper arousal and hyper vigilance,
Mhm.
releasing stress hormones constantly. And, we see this in post traumatic stress disorder, which
Mhm.
so many people have that have experienced childhood traumas. And so it's about, learning how to be safe in the world. And it starts with you being safe in your own skin and
Mhm.
developing the skills that you might not have received in the childhood you had, how to express your needs, to have them met, who to express them to and who not to, that discernment,
Mhm.
and, how to self soothe. And Lily, I've been just the value of self soothing, I think,
Mhm.
is a most powerful skill set that we can develop ongoingly, because even a person with the best of friends and a wonderful relationship, there's going to be times when just, it's you with you. And to have practices like I talk about in my book, like a walk in nature, meditation, baths. I'm a big like taking baths,
Mhm.
for self-soothing, music, journaling, and finding things that you can do on your own with yourself to de-escalate your emotions before you go to even reply or respond to somebody. And that's how we
Mhm.
learn to be responsive instead of reactive to
Mhm.
a text message, to a call, to a conversation. And it's okay to say, hey, like, I need to sit with this for a bit and get back to you. Because in that way, you're practicing, you're going to self soothe, and you're establishing a new pattern of relating and communicating that doesn't keep furthering things that, like cause problems between people.
Mhm. Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah. one of your I'd like to read a quote that really kind of hit deep with me, which was
Okay.
about wounds. You said, our wounds are the way in which divine makes contact with us in order to wake us up to an aspect of self that needs to be excavated and healed.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
Y-
deep.
Thank you. I think it's the Rumi quote about like the cracked places, my paraphrase. It's where the light
Hmm.
gets in.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I was thinking about as I wrote that as much as, who doesn't, myself included, want to avoid pain and,
Hmm.
think it'd be ideal if we never have to feel that kind of shit again. But at the same time, it can really, there's information. Our emotions are information. And I think
Hmm.
when we look at it as that, it kind of soothes it a bit, that when you're
Hmm.
in an experience of an emotion that you don't like, instead of trying to just shove it away, ask, like, what information do you have for me? And
Hmm.
sit to listen, because there's always going to be something from inside of you, like, and I see you nodding your head, like it's information for us to guide our lives with more ease
Hmm.
and to actually be happy when we
Yeah.
pause to listen.
So much. Yeah, so much. Yeah, it bothers what was coming to me is it bothers me sometimes about personal development when they talk about triggers as bad things.
Mm,
Um, and I always, I say this a lot on here, but I always, like, one of my clients, like I said, I focus on dating and love and
yeah.
relationships, and I want people to go to Trigger Town within support, like within
Yes.
support, because it's really, like you said, it's a great informational element about, okay, what's really happening here, what is this, what's the core wounding, and trying to work it out within a safe container rather than people on Facebook or like
Yes, 100%.
you know
Lily, absolutely. That containment piece that you're talking about is so important. Learning to contain. And like you said, instead of blasting it out on Facebook or other social media platforms, like journal. I encourage clients and even myself, I'll text myself instead of that
Mm,
person just to get it out, and then wait
mhm,
till the next day and say, like, does any of this need to be shared? And usually it's like a
mm,
fraction of that amount. And then you don't, like, show your ass so much. Like, you're able
mhm,
to really respond and not feel embarrassed or like you're apologizing all the time. It really can help, that containment piece you just spoke about.
yeah, so much. So thank you. That quote was really deep. It really hit me. So I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Um, so how does one move then from wounding to healing after we identify this? Was there a lot of stuff that you just said, or was there anything you'd like to add? Like
Definitely, I
self-soothing,
think
obviously.
adding the self-forgiveness
Oh,
component to
yeah.
this, and
Hmm.
empathy,
Hmm.
because I think those are two key elements that in therapy, like, I don't really remember in grad school being taught about the role of self-forgiveness. We hear so much about forgiveness for others, especially in spiritual and religious teachings even, but then what about for us? Because first and foremost, if we don't have a personal experience of self-forgiveness and empathizing to our own
Hmm.
path, our own story, like, we're just not going to be able to give it to others. And I think we see so much of that today. And so really to pause and think about, even for me on almost a daily basis, I'll reflect on my day and think, is there anything I need to forgive myself for? And that might seem kind of extreme.
Mm.
And usually there's not something like, we think of forgiveness as being so big, but forgiveness are like little micro decisions and thoughts in our mind
Mhm.
and in our heart. And I think, each day there might have been something, even to yourself, like, I was really hard on myself earlier. So I'd like to forgive myself for being hard on me. It's not always something you're doing to someone else, it's like how you're talking to yourself. And I think that's the biggest area where we can grow in self forgiveness and having
Mhm.
empathy. And I think that's transformational and healing our wounds.
So much. Yeah. I love how you brought that back from the inside out approach instead of outside in.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, because that huge misconception, I feel like, with forgiveness. And sometimes even like, I don't know how I would have, if I was in, back a couple years ago in kind of a bad space, how easy it would have been for me to forgive myself. Yeah. So maybe it's acceptance, or maybe it's like, because I feel like these big conceptual things can feel heavy, I guess, sometimes if it's not
Yeah.
familiar, maybe, or something like that.
Like what? Like what
Just,
particularly?
yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what's coming up. It's just
Yeah.
like forgiveness, I guess, whatever that subjective experience, I guess, is like whatever you want it to be. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Well, I wonder, even when you were just talking about, oh my gosh, I had a thought,
It
Lily.
happens to me all the time. It's our dissociation. It's okay.
Yeah. It'll come back if it needs to
Yeah.
come back.
Yes. No, it's just like, that's, I guess I'm just saying, like, there's a part of me coming up that's like, oh, I hear voices of maybe some people that are listening to this. And it's, for me, it wouldn't have been that easy just to be like, just to forgive myself, because I had no idea what self-compassion was, self-kindness,
Right.
like, I think I had to start at like acceptance, or I had to start at, I don't know, awareness or something like that, or acknowledgement or something like that. And then it moved to forgiveness. So I was just kind of channeling.
Okay, yes. Now I remembered. To me, that speaks to even feeling shame. I think when
Mm,
it's hard, when we feel that kind of mental obstruction or
mhm,
emotional obstruction, I think we're in a shame based place where we're
mm,
feeling, guilt is where you feel bad about something you've done, like a behavior and
mhm,
action that you want to clean up. And guilt can be effective to change our behaviors, but shame is when we feel bad about who we are. And it
mm,
goes so much deeper and into like the realms of like not deserving, of
mhm.
unworthiness. And that's what I kind of sensed and felt.
Yeah.
If someone listening is feeling like unworthy, like it truly doesn't matter what you did or didn't do, you're still valuable, and
Mm,
acting out of some old pattern, and just not knowing any better. So try to move yourself a bit into some gentle compassion of wanting to understand even why you did or didn't do what happened, and like what's next for you. How do you want to show up in your
mhm,
world? And then what steps, because the universe will show you like what steps you need to take to become that person, to to experience what you really want. Because sometimes it takes doing more things, and sometimes it takes doing less things, and learning to receive love and relax, and
mhm.
like literally smell the roses and the flowers in your neighborhood. And I think that's true for a lot of people, Lily. It's like really doing less and allowing some more ease and grace into their
Yeah.
lives.
Oh, that just sounded so supportive as you were talking about it. So yeah,
Yeah, and
that's
being a
amazing.
coach to yourself too. We
Yeah.
don't learn for the long haul through punishment, and
Hmm.
like you fucked up, and
Hmm.
you really learn, but it's like, oh my gosh, okay, you might have blown that, but like what do you need to do better next time? How do I
Hmm.
support you to do better next time? Like talking to
Hmm.
yourself and then getting yourself those things, those tools.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, what have we not covered that's important with your work before we
Oh my
close
gosh,
up today?
I think that's like it, Lily. That was beautiful. Such a natural conversation.
Yeah. Well, this is one of my favorite things to do in the whole wide
I can
world.
tell
I
you're
just
easy to talk to.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate having you on. What's going on with you? What are you working on? Where can people get your book? Where can people find you?
Awesome. I'd love to connect with people on social media. I am at NOLA Therapy, NOLA Therapy. It stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy, the two places I live.
Mhm.
And I love being a therapist. And if any of your listeners want to do a virtual session with me, I'm happy to offer them half off for a first
Mm,
time session or 30-day intensive. And they can find me at my website, nolatherapy.com. And my book is, Amazon, in Barnes and Noble stores. And if you have a favorite local bookstore, if you give them the title, they can order it for you from my
mm,
publisher to buy local. And you've just been wonderful, Lily.
mm. Well, thank you, Lisa. I will put all of
Yeah,
that in the show notes to make it easily accessible. And I
thank
so,
you.
so appreciate your time today. Thank you for
I
coming to the
appreciate
show.
yours. You're welcome.
I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lisa Tahir. I just love differing viewpoints, and it's so amazing how, you know, the way that the method of the way that these things kind of like, people say, quote unquote, download into their being, and how Lisa learned all this information. It's just so interesting, and really powerful, right? And I think her method, the Chiron effect, and psychoastrology, although I will definitely say that I'm not a studier, I'm not a student of astrology by any means, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a great tool to look at our lives, and maybe some common themes and common patterns. And really, that's all that it comes down to, the things that I do, the things that the other practitioners and other coaches and other great, dope, amazing people that I bring on the podcast, they're really just bringing a tool to find out who we are, how we're supposed to have impact in the world, how we're supposed to love, how we're supposed to be fulfilled and enhanced. And what I really hope this space serves for you is the ability to listen, find out more information about these different tools and modalities, and really to test things out and see what fits. Because I think the thing that really bothers me about the personal development space is that it's like, this is my way or the highway. And that's really re-traumatizing if we're really going to get right down to it. So, and I do here. So I really hope you enjoyed learning about the Chiron effect. It was very interesting to me as well. And the piece we talked about that she applied to my life definitely has been a throughput through almost every stage and every awakening and every hardship that I've had mentally, physically, emotionally. And so super important for me to kind of dive into this with you guys here in this space. So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lisa. Two announcements before we close up today. One is, don't forget to support this show. There's so many great people in this community, so many great people that have been with me since 2018, or maybe you're just being introduced into this space. But I do have the ability for you to support the show with a nominal investment, $1, $5, or $10 per month, to really go to production costs, me finding great guests, me spending my time in researching and reading every single book that comes through here, and preparing for a great conversation. And really, I love coffee, I love treat myself. So if you'd like to treat, however you would like to treat me and this work that I do, I will gladly receive your support. So to support this show, go to the link in the comments, click on support, and you can elect what option that you would like. And I would really, really enjoy that, just to know you're out there, because I know you are, and I'm so glad you're here. The last the last announcement today is that if you have not taken the feminine dating archetype quiz, whether you are actively dating or whether you would just like to know maybe a little bit more about yourself if you are in a relationship, my invitation for you is to go to the link in the show notes. It's lilybewley.com/quiz to take the feminine dating archetype quiz. It will reveal some of your blocks to love, and it will help you get you on the right path towards love, towards your true love match, or maybe even self-love if you are currently in a relationship. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes. And lastly, I really, really just want to say, I am so honored to have you here. So many amazing listeners, so many amazing supporters, so many amazing people sending their love to me. Even though I don't see you, I feel it deep in my heart, and I'm bouncing it right back, sending it to you, mirroring all the love that we all deserve, that we all are perfect and more than qualified for to receive. Thank you for being here. I love you, and I'll see you next time.